beautiful gamers, and welcome back to Role-Playing Games, this Mariel corner in the internet where we like to talk about video games. If you haven't already, I would very much like for you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You can always find interesting stuff in here. That being said, let's get right to the matter. What are we going to be discussing about today? Today we're going to be talking about one of the best weapons for beginners in Souls games. Now, I know that right now, most of the gamers out there, most of the Souls players are experienced players that know what they are doing in their games. Most of the times they do not need like this kind of advices. But nevertheless, it is important to note, it is important to know that these kind of weapons are so really heavily underrated, and they should be getting more attention. And that being said, let's just talk about the weapons on themselves, and in here you can find them throughout all of the Souls games. And I am speaking about weapons that do not scale with anything. As you can see, there is no scaling on the attribute. As you can see here, there is no scaling in any attribute, because the base damage that it has, it's already in there. You do not need to place any points into strength, dexterity, intelligence, nor fate. Although I do have them because this is a quality build. It's just the weapon that I had lying around to showcase this thing. I do have the stats right here. You can see them. I have 40 on strength and 40 on dexterity on a soul level 145 character. But do have in mind, those stats are not impacting whatsoever my weapon. My weapon, it doesn't matter if I had 0 strength and 0 dexterity, it's always going to have that 2/2/2 on physical and 2/2/2 on fire damage. These weapons are mostly used by soul level 1 speedrunners or soul level 1's just playthroughs, because you do not need to invest any kind of stat in them to be able for them to dish decent amount of damage. It's not going to be as efficient. This is one of the most important things to have in mind when we discuss about this kind of weapons. Whenever these weapons come to mind to discussion, all of the people go crazy and say, hey, no, that's not efficient, that's never going to be a good weapon, that's never going to be as efficient as a proper scaled weapon that scales on the stats that you have for your build. No, but this right here, this what I have right here, what I am trying to showcase with this kind of build, if you like to call it like that, is that this is the best weapon for beginners, the best weapon choice. Now, will this be present in the Elden Ring? Most likely, some variation of this weapon will be. As you saw in the gameplay preview, you saw that the stats, the main character stats, are pretty much the same baseline for the Souls-like games formula. And there was this character that was using the broadsword. It was the very same model. It's pretty much open world Dark Souls. Now, what I'm trying to get at with this thing, with this weapon, I'm going to be showcasing the weapon against a powerful enemy. But why is this so damn powerful for a beginner new player? And that's when builds come to mind. As you can hear, as you can see here, this is a properly built character. It's a little bit higher leveled than what it should be. Ideally, if you want your characters to be PvP characters or something like that, or whenever you finish a Souls-like, it's more than likely that by the time that you reach the end of the game, you will be from 100 to 120 level. This is a little bit more, because this is a new game plus character. I have been farming quite some souls with him, so that's why he's so high level. Now, imagine for a moment that this is a soul level 1 character, alright? It's just a soul level 1 character. When you start to make a build, when you start to make your character, you need to have several things in mind. You need to have HP in mind. You have to have attunement in mind if you're planning on getting to use any kind of spells. You need to have endurance in mind as well, and you need to have vitality in mind as well. Endurance and vitality are very important because they determine what kind of gear and how much can you defend against the hazards of the world, of the perilous world that surrounds you. And then you have your base scaling stat. As you can see, this character that I have right here, it's a pretty demanding character. It demands for you to have strength, dexterity, and luck. And yes, believe it or not, luck is an important part of this build. Luck is an important part for this character damage. So I am investing quite a lot. But what if I told you that in order for you to have decent enough damage, is not going to be as high as the one that I have for this character, but yeah, you can have decent enough damage if you get rid of that luck, if you get rid of that dexterity, if you get rid of that strength, and that leaves you somewhat of 90 extra points to invest into vigor, endurance, vitality, and you're not actually going to be needing them that much. There's the more experienced players, well, like myself, I should like to believe that I am an experienced player. I have been playing Souls games for years and years and years. Mostly, we tend to go for 20 vitality, 20 vigor, 20 vigor whenever you start the character. Because having low health, you do not need to mind having low health whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be compensating that with the damage that you're going to be allocating in your damage stats. And when you fight against a specific kind of boss fight, you do not need health. You need to be dodging them. If you know how to play the game, you do not need to withstand the punishment. But that's not the case when you're a new character. You're going to get hit, and you're going to get beaten quite a lot. So these weapons are going to help alleviate that. Why? Because these weapons do not need to scale with anything. So if you're a new player, you choose one of these weapons, which in the case of Dark Souls 3 could be a deep weapon, a weapon of the deep, a fire weapon. In Dark Souls 2, every single weapon scales, but they follow somewhat of the same pipeline with fire and electric weapons. In Dark Souls 1, you have electric weapons, fire weapons, chaos weapons that actually do require for you to have humanities to be able to use them properly. But at the end of the day, these weapons, you want them as a new player because they do not have any scaling. They have the base damage, which means that you only need 16 strength for this specific weapon and 12 dexterity. Why? Because those are the stats that you need to use them. That's everything that you need to use them. Once you get those stats, as you improve the weapon, it's always going to have that kind of damage. Now let's compare the base raw damage that you can have on these weapons. If we go to my pal Andre right here, and we go to infused weapon, we will see that if I place a refined gem, which is ideal for this kind of weapon, because I am a quality build, I have 14 strength and 14 dexterity. If I place a quality gem with this weapon, a refined gem, it's going to raise the damage that I have right now, 444, to 476. Yeah, 476. So it's increasing the damage by 30 points. Now, that might actually not seem to be that much, but that actually is. Because when you have splitted kind of damage, you also have splitted resistances on the enemies, so the enemies have resistance to fire, resistance to physical. Now let's have this little thing in mind. The fact that this weapon is fire damage, it doesn't necessarily mean that when you fight against a fire resistant enemy, it's going to mitigate completely the damage. That it's not going to be the case. You're going to be dealing a little bit less damage, but it's not going to completely negate the damage, which is something that people tend to forget. They feel like, oh no dude, that's a fire resistant enemy, that weapon's useless because you're going to be fighting against fire resistant enemies. It doesn't matter. You can use this properly and still have enough survivability. Do remember, that's hugely important. The fact that an enemy has a resistance, it doesn't necessarily mean that negates completely the damage. For example, this is my main weapon. This is purely physical weapon damage, but it's also thrusting damage. And as you can see, we also have resistances against physical damage and against thrust damage. So it doesn't really matter that you do not have a specific physical weapon, because at the end of the day, all of the enemies at some extent are resistant to everything in this game. A little bit less on this, a little bit less on that, but at the end of the day, the enemies are resistant to all kinds of damage. When you're using an elemental weapon, you're dividing those resistances, and so the enemies are a little bit more resistant. But to have this in mind, you can have proper damage with a fire weapon and not completely have the damage negated. Now, I'm going to be showcasing this build. I'm going to be fighting. Right now, I cannot fight against anyone because I have already completed the game, both of the DLC and the main game. So right now, I'm going to head to a New Game Plus. This is New Game Plus 2 right now, so I'm going to be jumping over to New Game Plus 3. As you can see right here, I'm going to be beginning my third journey. So that means that the enemy that I am going to be fighting against is quite strong. At the end of the day, Judex Gundyr is not the strongest enemy in the game, but it will be sufficient enough to show you that you can fight against end-game enemies with this kind of weapon, and just focus yourself on vigor, vitality, endurance, and all of the other stats that are important for new players. I'll see you in a bit once I get to that guy. Alright, we're back. And like I said, this is not the strongest enemy that you can find out here in the game, but it's sufficient enough to showcase that a proper weapon, a proper elemental weapon that removes completely the scaling damage, it's enough to fight against this kind of enemies. So, let's see how we do against Judex Gundyr. Pretty reasonable damage, as you can see. Whoo! Those hitboxes, baby. No, sir. Oh, he turned. And as you can see, as I just showcased properly, I fought against Judex Gundyr. This is New Game Plus 3. Do have in mind that if you were a new character, this kind of boss, this is what you would be fighting against if you would be at the end of the game. And do have in mind, imagine for a little moment that you do not need to invest any kind of points into strength, dexterity, intelligence, faith, or luck. Because the weapon that you have right now, it's a fire weapon, a fire-based weapon, that it's always going to have this kind of damage. It doesn't matter your strength. It doesn't really matter also that you two-handed. Right now I have 444, and then I two-handed, and it's also 444. Because two-handing a weapon, the only thing that does is that increases your strength by 15%, if my memory serves me well. It increases your strength. So therefore, it would increase the strength of a weapon that scales with strength. So it doesn't matter if you wield these weapons two-handed or one-handed, it's always going to have this kind of damage. So this is the best weapon that you can use as a beginner character, as a beginner player, as a new player to the Souls game. So if you're planning on getting Elden Ring, if you're planning on playing Elden Ring, I am going to be searching for this kind of builds, for this kind of weapons for you, new player, that you are trying to be good at the game, to have a nice time and to be as efficient as humanly possible. That way, you'll have a merry old time. So like I said, the best weapons that you can have as a new player is a scaleless weapon. Weapons that not scale with any stats. Elemental weapons. I know that these are not the most efficient weapons. Right now I have, like, for example, my main weapon has like 500 damage, and also if I apply a resin to it, it has like 600 damage, so that's crazy, huge amounts of damage. Also, if I use this weapon like this, it also increases the damage as well. So like I said, this is like, we're speaking about like 200 damage difference, which is enormous amount of damage. But like I said, normal weapons are enough for you for your first playthrough. With normal weapons, you can forget about strength and dexterity and focus yourself on popping all of your points as you level up. All of your points as you level up are going to be going into vigor, endurance, vitality, everything else that you need to survive in the world and still have a weapon that helps you go through the game, no problemo. So that being said, that was all from me, guys. I hope that you find the guide useful. I hope that you find the video, the information useful. And I'll be seeing you damn gorgeous and beautiful gamers in the next one. Do remember that if no one's told you today that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, then you are indeed a freaking gorgeous and beautiful person. Have a beautiful day.